Beneath the cold slabs of Westminster Abbey, the air seems to carry its own weight. It is an air that is not breathed but endured. It tastes of iron, of old incense, of the dampness that soaks through the centuries. In that mineral silence, a lead box rests like a sealed heart. No one dares to get too close. No one wants to imagine what it holds. They say the dead keep secrets better than the living, and that beneath that lid sleeps not only a body, but a carefully preserved lie. There lies Elizabeth Tudor, the woman whom history turned into a statue, a myth, an emblem. Her name, Elizabeth Urfserd, is still pronounced with reverence, as if it were synonymous with glory. But the air surrounding her tomb does not smell of sanctity or triumph. It smells of fear and power, of an invented purity, of a devotion manufactured to sustain an empire. Her official history is written in gold, but her truth is written in lead. Every civilization needs a face to believe in itself. Rome had its gods. France had Joan. England had its Virgin Queen. Propaganda called her Gloriana, Astrea, the light of the world. She was the immutable face of a country that needed to appear strong, incorruptible, eternal. But eternal faces do not breathe, do not age, do not bleed. To maintain that brilliance, more than just a body had to be buried. The flesh, the pain, and the doubt were buried. The woman was entombed so that the symbol could be born. Imagine that final moment. The candles burn down to nothing. The smoke traces circles over the Queen's motionless face. Outside, the Thames reflects a lusterless moon. Inside, the silence weighs more than the crown. The ladies step aside. The doctors fall silent. The incense tries to mask the sour smell of the fading body. And yet beneath that smell of sanctity and death, something persists, the echo of a life that never entirely belonged to her. England needed a goddess, not a woman, a virgin who would embody the purity of the Protestant realm, who would cleanse the stains of the past with her image alone. The marriage of Henry VIII and the heresy of Rome had divided the faith of Europe. Elizabeth was to be the remedy, the symbol of a renewed, pure England, guided by a monarch married to her people. But what price did she pay to become that symbol? Chroniclers portrayed her as serene, covered in pearls and white silk, a porcelain figure illuminated by divine grace. No one spoke of the fear, the poison, the isolation. No one spoke of the body that was sacrificed to sustain a collective illusion. Empires, as Francis Bacon said, are built on truths that no one dares to open. The lead coffin was not sealed out of respect, but out of fear. The fear that the myth would crumble if the body were to speak. Because perhaps inside that box rests not only a queen, but the most useful lie of an entire nation. England preferred to worship an image rather than accept an imperfect woman. Beneath the marble of Westminster rests not glory, but fragility coated in metal. Lead not only preserves, it also silences, it also protects. It is a political silence, a silence that turned a woman into dogma and her suffering into a state religion. And even today, 4 centuries later, that silence remains intact. The crypt is closed, the air still smells of iron. No one dares to break the seal. Perhaps because they fear that what emerges from there will not just be a desiccated body, but the reflection of an empire that still needs lies to sustain itself. Tell me, how many modern myths also rest beneath their own lead? How many truths do we prefer to seal away rather than smell their rot? Elizabeth's story does not begin with her birth, but with her burial. Because sometimes to understand the life of a queen, you must first open her tomb. The roar of a crowd cuts through the London air. It is May 1536. In the courtyard of the Tower, a sword gleams for an instant before falling. The blade is French, swift, precise. A sigh, and Anne Boleyn's head rolls onto the damp straw. The sun beats down on the stones, and for a moment all of England seems to hold its breath. The queen who defied the Pope and changed the religion of the realm pays for her audacity with blood. There are no prayers, there is no justice, only a carefully orchestrated spectacle so the people learn who is in charge. Amidst the corridors of the palace, a little girl hears a scream she will never forget. She does not see the steel, but she feels its echo bouncing off the walls. That girl is 2.5 years old. Her name is Elizabeth. That day she learns her first lesson. In the Tudor court, love is paid for with your life. Her father, Henry VIII, is a god with human appetites, a man who confuses faith with desire and salvation with lineage. Every wife is a sacrifice, every betrayal a divine pretext. The altars of power are built with broken promises and female bodies. In every corner of the palace, the incense tries to erase the smell of fear, but it fails. The walls covered in golden tapestries cannot hide the invisible stains of guilt. There, between luxury and terror, Elizabeth grows up. She learns to walk in a world where silence is a shield. The hallways are long, full of echoes, and doors open only for those who know how to keep quiet. The women who survive do so by learning to disappear before being noticed. Catherine Howard, the naive young woman who confuses desire with love and ends up decapitated. Anne of Cleves, who smiles and steps aside in time, saving her neck at the cost of her pride. Catherine Parr, who grows old in peace because she knows how to become invisible. Elizabeth observes them all and understands the game before knowing the rules. Childhood becomes a lesson in political anatomy. She knows that men pray with the same mouth they use to lie. She knows that a king's power is measured by the scars of his wives. When Henry calls her a bastard, when the throne rejects her, Elizabeth does not cry. She keeps silent. Every unspoken word becomes a coin of future power. In later portraits, painters will imagine her serene, with clear eyes and a high forehead. But in that little girl there is something harder than innocence, the memory of the blade. Every night as the candles burn out, she remembers her mother's story like an inverted prayer. She does not ask for mercy, she asks for control. The royal tutors try to mold her according to Christian virtues, obedience, purity, devotion. But she learns a different virtue, prudence. In a world where faith is used as a weapon, silence is the only prayer that does not condemn. When other children play, Elizabeth studies. When others dream, she observes. Her mind sharpens every memory as if it were a knife. And behind that precocious intelligence is something no one sees. Hereditary fear. The fear of the sword, of the king's gaze, of the love that kills. A fear that, over the years, will transform into discipline. That will be her true religion. Do not trust. Do not depend. Do not love. Thus grows the daughter of a decapitated woman, in a palace where cradles smell of incense and crowns of blood. By the age of 10, she already understands that in the court there are no innocents, only survivors. She does not seek tenderness. She seeks knowledge. She does not yearn to be loved, but to be indispensable. In her father's eyes, she sees the mirror of power, cold, unpredictable, absolute. That girl, marked by steel, will turn pain into strategy, and the silence of that day, that of the falling sword, will remain forever beating beneath her skin, reminding her that even royalty can lose their head for love. Elizabeth grows up among books and ghosts. When war and faith tear England apart, she takes refuge in pages. The scholars her father despises become her true teachers. Latin teaches her precision, Greek teaches her logic, philosophy teaches her control. Every foreign word she learns is another stone in the wall she builds between her mind and the world. Because in the court, ignorance kills, but knowledge can be disguised as humility. In the eyes of others, she remains the bastard daughter of an executed queen, a shadow among the legitimate heirs, a name that makes the nobility uncomfortable. But inside her, something colder than fear takes root, the conviction that weakness kills. She observes the men who argue about God while condemning women for looking too high, and she understands that feminine strength cannot be expressed in shouts. It must hide behind wit. Her education is not just a way to escape, but to dominate. She learns to play the lute to feign docility, to speak French to negotiate without translators, to quote Seneca to appear pious. Every skill is a disguise, every smile a tactic. She knows the court is watching, that the eyes of ambassadors linger on every gesture, that any poorly measured word could be her ruin. So she makes silence her best language. When her father dies and the throne passes from hand to hand, Elizabeth is already an expert at surviving. Under the reign of her brother Edward, she dissembles. Under that of her sister Mary, she prays just enough to avoid dying at the stake. Mid-16th century England is a minefield. Every mass can be treason, every prayer a political act. While blood flows for reasons of faith, she learns that believing is not as important as appearing to believe. In those years, she develops an almost supernatural mastery, that of restraint. Her gestures are measured, her voice never rises. She learns to cry without tears and to smile without joy. The diplomats who visit her note in their letters that her serenity is unsettling. They do not know that behind that calm lies exact calculation, an awakened awareness of danger. At night when the court sleeps, Elizabeth reads the Stoic philosophers, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Cicero. She underlines the phrases that speak of self-mastery. The soul that rules over itself is free, she writes in the margin of a manuscript. Perhaps therein lies the seed of her reign, the idea that freedom does not consist of doing, but of resisting. The princess observes the world as if from behind a pane of glass. She knows that a glance can betray more than a confession. She knows that love is a luxury the Tudors cannot afford. Into her silences, the court projects fantasies, that she is cold, that she is holy, that she is cynical. She lets them think what they want. Every rumor, every interpretation is another veil that protects her. Deep down, Elizabeth has already understood something that history will take centuries to admit. Power is not conquered, it is performed. And for a woman, the only way to survive in a world of kings is to learn to be invisible until her moment arrives. When that moment finally arrives, it will not find her naive. It will find her prepared, with a mind sharpened by study and a heart hardened by fear. Then, the little girl who one day heard a sword fall will be ready to wield it. The winter of 1554 arrives with the sound of keys and chains. Elizabeth, 21 years old, walks through the damp corridors of the Tower of London. The air smells of mold and muffled prayers. They call her a traitor, a bastard, a heretic. Her crime, being the daughter of Anne Boleyn and not being dead yet. In the stone dungeons, rats move beneath the floorboards as if guarding the secrets of the realm. Every dawn could be her last. For weeks, the interrogations are repeated. The guards watch her, looking for a crack, a tremor, a confession. But she gives them nothing. She grits her teeth, measures her words, feigns serenity. Her impassive face drives her jailers to despair. They do not know that Elizabeth's calm is not innocence, but strategy. There in the prison where many lose their faith, she strengthens hers, not in God, but in herself. Every night she imagines the sound of the axe that one day severed her mother's head. She hears it in her dreams. She feels it on her neck. But when she wakes up, she decides to fear no more. If she must die, she will do so standing. And if she lives, she will never kneel before anyone again. In those cold cells, the young princess learns her final childhood lesson. Silence saves, but will creates. 2 months later, the doors of the tower open. They accuse her without proof. They release her without apologies. The open air hits her like a revelation. The girl who walks out of there is not the same one who walked in. Her voice is slower, her gestures more measured, her gaze more opaque. Innocence has been walled up between the stones of the dungeon. 4 years later, history takes an impossible turn. Mary Tudor, the queen who had sworn to purge England of heresy, dies leaving no heirs. The people, tired of burnings and persecutions, need hope, and destiny offers it in the form of a woman who learned to survive. Elizabeth, the daughter of scandal, the bastard of heresy, is crowned Queen of England. On January 15, 1559, the bells ring, the drums roar, the nobles bow. Under a gray sky, the young woman with red hair and an icy gaze ascends to the throne. All of London acclaims her. Poets speak of rebirth, priests of a miracle. But beneath the gold of the crown, she feels the invisible weight of sacrifice. The freedom she dreamed of within the walls of the tower does not exist. The throne does not liberate, it imprisons. Power has its price, constant vigilance. Every ambassador watches her. Every rumor about her body can ignite a war. The council demands that she marry, secure the succession, surrender her womb to diplomacy. France offers princes, Spain archdukes, but Elizabeth knows that the altar is just another scaffold. A marriage would mean abdicating the control that cost her so much to achieve. An endless procession of suitors parades by. All promise loyalty, all desire the crown. She listens to them, smiles, and dismisses them. She does not promise, she does not deny. Time becomes her sharpest weapon. While they grow old waiting for her answer, she reinforces her power. She understands that to reign, she does not need a husband, but patience. The counselors murmur. The people are divided between those who revere her and those who fear her. But she does not budge. Every day she perfects her role. The Virgin Queen, pure, unbreakable, and almost divine figure. The court does not know whether to admire her or fear her. And it is precisely that ambiguity that keeps her alive. The young woman who survived prison now rules an empire. But her victory lacks the sweetness of triumph. Deep down, she knows that power is nothing more than a gilded cage. And while portraits show her smiling, crowned immortal, she understands that the true danger is not outside, but within her own reflection. The echo of nuptial chants no longer moves her. For Elizabeth, marriage is a battlefield where women always lose. She has seen it in her mother, in her stepmothers, in every queen reduced to a sacrifice. But destiny, capricious, places before her a man who challenges her armor. Robert Dudley, her childhood friend, her shadow, her mirror. Between them, there is a closeness that frightens the counselors. He makes her laugh. She trusts him more than she should. Ambassadors write reports to all of Europe. Her Majesty's love for Lord Dudley exceeds what is decorous. At first they are rumors, then glances, then gestures that no one should see. But in the Tudor court, where every sigh is interpreted as a declaration of war, love is not a private weakness, but a public threat. Tragedy strikes soon. Amy Robsart, Dudley's wife, is found dead at the foot of a staircase. Her neck broken, her body twisted. Some say accident, others whisper murder. The most daring murmur that it was the Queen who ordered it. All of Europe shudders. The Virgin of England is stained with suspicion. Elizabeth does not defend herself. There are no tears. There is no denial. Only silence. A silence so cold that it becomes legend. In 16th century diplomacy, not speaking was more powerful than any speech. While the people invent stories, she maintains control. She finally understands what her mother never knew. In a world ruled by men, love is a trap and desire a sentence. From that day on, the Queen buries the woman. No more affections, no more risks. She dresses in white, not as a symbol of purity, but as armor, the color of wax, of bones, of marble. A virgin does not need flesh. She needs myth. And the myth begins to be built layer by layer, like her makeup. The paint with which she covers her face is made of Venetian ceruse, lead powder and vinegar, a poison disguised as purity. Every morning her ladies prepare her as if it were a ritual. The mirror returns a fragmented reflection, half queen, half ghost. Her skin becomes whiter, her lips redder, her eyes colder. Behind that perfection hides the price. The lead penetrates her blood. Her body begins to pay the toll of immortality. The doctors call it melancholy. History will call it majesty. The truth is crueler. The Queen is slowly dying to continue looking perfect. The migraines, the fatigue, the fainting spells are symptoms of the poison, but no one dares to suspend the ritual. The image of the sovereign is the image of the state. If the Queen's skin cracks, England cracks with her. Meanwhile, the corset completes the torture. The whale bones and steel hoops mold her figure to the point of asphyxiation. Breathing becomes an act of will. The body, a prisoner, becomes a monument. When she enters the council, she does so upright, impeccable, unbreakable. The courtiers bow, marveling at her bearing. No one suspects that beneath the velvet there are open sores. This is how divinity is built, on a foundation of pain. Artists paint her with an ageless face. Poets compare her to the sun. But what they call glory, she feels as a cold that never goes away. In the solitude of her chamber, when the lights go out, Elizabeth touches her own skin and feels no warmth. only marble. The queen who refused love no longer belongs to the world of the living. Her flesh has become a symbol, her body an altar. And every morning, when the mirror returns her image, she knows that what she sees is not a woman, but a poisoned myth that breathes only because England demands it. Beyond the palace walls, the world changes, but within them, time seems to stand still. The queen lives surrounded by gold, tapestries, and incense. Yet at the center of all this splendor sits a throne of ice. England calls her Gloriana. Poets compare her to goddesses. But she knows that beneath the flattery hides fear. Her authority is absolute, but so is her loneliness. Her every gesture is observed, every word noted by ambassadors who study her as if she were an oracle. She knows that a smile from her can stop a war, and a silence can provoke one. Her entire life has become a performance. Audiences are a theater, councils a choreography. Elizabeth plays the role of herself, aware that if the queen stops acting, the myth collapses. But the body does not understand symbols. The sleepless nights, the migraines, the increasingly deep voice, the tremors in her hands, the symptoms of lead poisoning multiply. Her skin dries out, her blood thickens, her mind clouds over. Sometimes she forgets what she just said. Other times she confuses faces. Her ladies-in-waiting notice her lips cracking, her skin peeling beneath the makeup, but none dare to speak. Silence is already part of the protocol. The corset, that instrument of perfection, has become her executioner. Her ribs cave in, her organs shift. The pain becomes constant. But when the drawing room doors open, she stands tall, smiles, and steps forward with a dignity that makes the courtiers tremble. No one must know. No one must see that immortality hurts. Outside the palace, the world roars. In Scotland, another woman shares her blood and an opposite destiny. Mary Stuart, Catholic, a mother, young, everything Elizabeth is not. Her existence is a living challenge, a reminder of what the Queen sacrificed. While Elizabeth rules with an iron mind, Mary embodies passion and faith. The people compare them. Spies pit them against each other. Counselors conspire. Intrigues grow like poison ivy. Ciphered letters, promises of thrones, conspiracies blessed by Rome. When a plot bearing Mary's name is discovered, Elizabeth understands that mercy can be deadly. The signature trembles, but the hand does not hesitate. She seals her cousin's death warrant with the coldness of someone who has understood that power demands sacrifices the heart cannot pay. On February 8, 1587, Mary's head rolls before a horrified audience. The queen saves her kingdom, but something inside her dies as well. For months, she does not eat, does not sleep. Her dreams are of blood, her days of silence. In the darkest nights, she thinks she hears the echo of the sword that killed her mother, the same sound that history now repeats. And just as the shadow of guilt begins to dissipate, a new enemy rises. Philip II of Spain. The Spanish Armada advances through the Channel with 130 ships, thousands of men, and priests ready to restore the Catholic faith. Elizabeth is 54 years old, her body sick, poison in her veins, but the fire in her eyes remains intact. She mounts a horse once again, dressed in ceremonial armor. Her helmet reflects the gray morning light, her white face shining like a banner. Before the soldiers, she speaks the words that will immortalize her. I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. And for a moment, even the sea seems to fall silent. For 3 hours, she holds the gaze of her men. Her voice cuts through the wind. Fear transforms into fury. The storm that follows destroys the Spanish Armada. Europe calls it a miracle. She calls it destiny. England proclaims her a savior, and the myth of the Virgin Queen is carved in stone. But when she returns to her chambers, the miracle fades. Her body can no longer keep up the pretense. She collapses on the floor, vomiting blood onto the silk. The doctors kneel, powerless. The kingdom celebrates the victory. Its queen begins to die. The years following Tilbury are not of glory, but of decay. The queen who defied kings and storms no longer fully belongs to the world of the living. The lead poison has turned her skin into cracked porcelain, her blood into a slow, thick river. And yet every morning she insists on the same ritual, washing with vinegar, covering her face with layers of ceruse, tightening the corset until her bones creak. Because power allows no rest, and appearance is worth more than health. Ambassadors begin to notice something unsettling. The queen's voice is deeper, her gestures more rigid, her gaze emptier. Some write that her countenance has something inhumanly perfect about it. Rumors multiply. Is the Virgin Queen actually an impossible body, a mistake of nature, a creature outside the natural order? The doctors who examine her remain silent. One dies shortly after. Documents disappear. The court learns that there are questions that must not be asked. In the hallways, the air grows thick. Portraits of Elizabeth become more symbolic, less human. Her skin white as marble, her ageless face surrounded by suns and serpents, moons and stars. It is the final metamorphosis. The woman fades away, and the myth takes her place. England no longer sees its queen, it sees its goddess. But the body continues to collect its debt. The tremors in her hands become permanent. Her skin, when the makeup is removed, peels off in sheets. The wounds beneath her corset fester. No one dares to touch her. Perfumes, petals, and incense attempt to hide the smell of decay. Power has its own perfume, a courtier would later say, a mixture of lead, flowers, and death. And yet every day the queen rises. She orders her ladies to cover the mirrors. She can no longer bear to see the creature she has become. She talks to herself, sometimes to the ghosts that accompany her headless mother, her cousin with a severed neck. Robert Dudley, the love that never was. She calls them by their names, asks for their forgiveness, curses them. No one answers. Time becomes an enemy. Her nights are a procession of memories, her court a graveyard of voices. Ministers age, friends die. The poets who praised her turn to ash. Only she remains, sitting on a throne she no longer feels. England prospers, its trade flourishes, immortal works are written, but the woman who rules it lives in ruins. The deepest mourning comes in 1580, weeks after the victory against the Armada. Robert Dudley dies. The news reaches her at Greenwich. When she receives his last letter, she folds it with trembling hands and keeps it in a small velvet box. From then on, she never takes it off her neck. It is the closest thing she will ever have to a heart. Power continues to revolve around her, but she has lost her center. She eats little, sleeps less. The days dissolve into an increasingly thick silence. Servants say that, at night, she can be heard murmuring wordless prayers. In her final portraits, her smile looks like wax, her eyes pits of shadow, and yet England reveres her. The more the woman dies, the stronger the myth becomes. Artists paint her as Astrea, the celestial virgin. Poets compare her to the eternal sun. No one mentions the pain beneath the silk or the wounds beneath the gold, because the kingdom needs to believe that its queen is incorruptible, even as her body rots in silence. On March 24, 1603, silence conquers. Elizabeth cannot speak, cannot eat. She refuses to lie down, as if surrendering to rest were admitting defeat. To stand is to live, she murmurs. For days she remains seated among cushions, supported by her ladies, her gaze lost on an invisible point. Sometimes she laughs for no reason. Other times she cries without tears. Her abdomen swells, her skin turns greenish. The smell in her chambers is unbearable. Candles drip onto the marble like wax tears. When her breathing finally stops, silence fills the room like a mass without a priest. No one dares to touch her. Power has died, but the performance continues. The doctors remove the paint and discover the truth. Her skin peels away. Her torso bears the engraved marks of the corset. Her wounds are black. They wrap her in linens soaked in ointments and molten lead. The smell of metal and flesh mingles with the incense. They say 3 doctors died shortly after. They sealed the coffin not out of respect, but out of fear, because they knew that if anyone opened it, the truth of the empire would spill out with the stench of rot. The lead sealed more than a corpse. It sealed an uncomfortable truth, that the greatness of a kingdom could be built upon the suffering of a woman. With Elizabeth's body enclosed beneath metal, England breathed a sigh of relief. The myth was complete. Not a queen, but a relic. Not a woman, but an idea. And ideas, like gods, only survive when the pain that birthed them is erased. For weeks, the palace remains in silence. Windows covered, clocks stopped, bells silenced. London smells of wax and smoke. No one knows how to speak of the end of a queen who had become more symbol than person. Chroniclers prepare panegyrics, poets write elegies, but no text manages to describe what has truly died, the boundary between flesh and myth. The following centuries will elevate her even further. They will call her Gloriana, Britannia, Astrea, the virgin goddess of order and reason. Her face will become a coin, an emblem, a flag. In classrooms, they will teach her life as an epic, the queen who defeated Spain, who united her people, who gave birth to the English Renaissance. No one will speak of the poison in her blood, the pain in her chest, the coldness of her loneliness. The lead coffin remains sealed, not to protect the bones, but to protect the narrative. Because an empire needs to believe that its foundation is pure, that its queen died intact, uncorrupted, sacred. England had transformed an imperfect woman into a flawless goddess, and to achieve this, it had to bury the truth along with her. Modern historiography disguises it as a national myth, but the mechanism is the same as in all empires, turning the female body into an altar where humanity is sacrificed in the name of glory. Rome had the Virgin Mary to justify its faith. France had Marianne to embody the Republic. England had Elizabeth, the Virgin of eternal power. Different names, same function, to console with beauty what was built with blood. The image of the Virgin Queen was useful, almost necessary. In a Europe torn apart by religious wars, Elizabeth offered a synthesis. Purity without cloister, authority without a husband, faith without fanaticism. She was the perfect answer to the anguish of a continent that feared chaos. But what the myth erased was the price, a life consumed to sustain the illusion of balance. Beneath the flagstones of Westminster, the lead guards the most eloquent silence in history. And that silence has endured, century after century, because revealing the truth would mean questioning an empire's faith in itself. What would happen if the coffin were open? What would we find? A body dissolved by poison? Or a mirror reflecting the face of all modern myths? Think about it. Every nation needs a history that absolves it, a face that symbolizes its purity, a lie that seems sacred. England's bears the name of a queen who never stopped dying, and while generations celebrate her, the shadows of Westminster continue to breathe. Perhaps, after all, the queen was never free, neither alive nor dead, only eternal, like all the women history turned into symbols so they could be forgotten as people. More than 4 centuries have passed, and the crypt door remains closed. The marble gleams, the air is heavy, and the temple guides repeat the same phrase for tourists. Here rests the Virgin Queen, founder of English glory. But the stones hold another memory, one that is not spoken aloud. Beneath that floor, there are not just bones. There is fear, the fear of an empire looking at itself naked in its own reflection. Because if the coffin were opened, perhaps we would not find a body, but a question. How many truths were buried to build this nation? Modern England was born upon the image of a woman who was sacrificed in the name of purity. And that is the great paradox of history. The more a country needs to prove its perfection, the deeper the wound it tries to hide. Official chronicles say her reign brought prosperity, art, and science. Shakespeare wrote for her, navigators expanded the world under her name, English culture flourished. All of that is true, but it is not the whole truth. Because behind every poem, every conquest, every coin bearing her face, there is a price no one wanted to pay in public, the price of the body that became a flag. Every civilization raises its idols upon the remains of a woman. Greece had Athena, born from a man's skull. Rome sanctified Mary, a mother without desire. England canonized Elizabeth, the queen who was not meant to love. 3 myths, 3 ways of denying the flesh to maintain order. Power, after all, always needs a sacrifice. When we speak of the Elizabethan era today, We do so with nostalgia, with pride. But that golden glow hides the truth, that the myth of female perfection served to sustain structures of control that still persist. The Virgin Queen is the precursor to an eternal model, the woman who must renounce herself to be admired, the one who lives without touching, who rules without feeling, who dies without resting. Perhaps that is Elizabeth's deepest legacy, not the language, nor the empire, nor the law, but the image of a woman turned into a broken mirror, a mirror in which the West continues to gaze at itself, without daring to admit that the beauty of its myths feeds on pain. Centuries have passed, but the rituals do not change. We continue embalming ideals, putting makeup on truths, gilding corpses so the present does not smell of failure. We keep repeating the same gestures, building goddesses so as not to see real women, erecting statues so as not to hear their screams. Think of your own myths, your own queens, your modern idols. How many of them are made of leaden silence? How many of our favorite legends rest upon exhausted, repressed, or erased bodies? How many times have we confused purity with fear? Elizabeth's tomb does not just hold a queen, it holds the empire's most useful lie, that power can be eternal if fed with the flesh of a woman. The lead that encloses her is not just metal, it is the weight of the secret we all share. And so, Westminster remains calm. The flagstones do not move, the air still smells of iron and incense. Outside, the world changes. Inside, the myth remains. Because opening that coffin would not just be profaning history, but looking at ourselves and admitting that we still live surrounded by ghosts.